Okay, brilliant. We'll move on. So JL Hall, we'll move on to you. I'm just going to, I won't read out all your many publications, JL Hall, here, but you have been published in many places. And you are a writer of fiction, non-fiction and poetry, and have published in some other anthologies as well. And you have forthcoming so far in 2021 is Poetry in Full House Literary Magazine and Prototype 3 anthology. You've won and been finalist in several international and national writing prizes, including the I Must Be Off Travel Writing Competition, the Emerging Writer Award, at Moniac Mahor, the Impress New Writers Prize, and the Lucy Cavendish College Fiction Prize. JL Hall lives by the sea in Edinburgh, where she teaches creative writing and works part-time as an academic. Thank you so much, JL Hall.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'd just really like to ask you, I mean, you've got a wonderful piece in the anthology, and I know that you've, I mean, you say here you do fiction and non-fiction, and you've done a number of flash pieces as well, which is what we've got. We're very lucky to have. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what writing has meant for you with your own recovery?
Yeah, I think I have a creative background, so I started out at art school and then went on and did sort of other things, moved to London, lived in London for a long time and all of that. And I never really had done any creative writing, but I'd always quite fancied doing some. And then I was waiting for treatment for severe complex PTSD. And I thought, I'm just going to sign up for a course. There was a bursary going for people on benefits, and I started writing. Obviously thought I'm going to write a novel from the start, because that's what you do when you've never written before. So and I just find the classes really amazing, and I think I started to write to escape, really, because I write a lot about place, not in this particular piece in the anthology, but generally write a lot about places and places I've been, or places that I'm surrounded by, the environment I'm surrounded by. And it really was about like snorkeling, just kind of going in and being somewhere else and seeing a whole other world. And I think being quite visual, I just wanted to create sort of scenes, you know, visual scenes around me. So it was, I suppose, to continue the snorkeling analogy, really, it was kind of a bit of a life buoy being thrown in, and it kept me afloat and kept me going. And I think it is something it's just a creative outlet, which is really, really helpful and can be really therapeutic. And it's just lovely being in that zone, that creative zone, that kind of writing zone as well. It's so beautiful. I feel very lucky to be able to do it, really.
And then, of course, if you have success and you have journals and outlets, magazines that want to publish your work, then that just fuels it, doesn't it? And you keep on going through that. So you're putting out, you're getting back. So I guess that sort of was validating for you, and it just meant that you continue to write and see that this could actually be a really kind of something that could grow and be part of your career.
So, I mean, I don't suppose I ever really, I think that's a really good way to look at it, actually, not something I'd considered before, because like everybody, I was writing a long time before, well, not that long time, but a few years before I was sort of confident enough to think, well, maybe I should take this a bit more seriously. I've started to get a couple of long listings and short listings and so on. But yeah, I think that's it. You then sort of think, especially when you don't have very much time to write, as I don't, you have to think about, well, when am I going to write and what I'm going to write. But it's really nice. You feel inspired by seeing things out there that you can submit to. And yeah, I guess that is quite validating. Obviously, there's lots of rejections, isn't there? Always, for everyone.
Yeah.
So I don't know if validating is quite the right word, but it becomes validating. Yeah.
Thank you, Jackie. And would you like to share your reading?
Yep. In our beautiful book. Just hold it up again. It's so lovely. Okay, so this is called Lucky, and it's page 345. Just take my glasses off. So Lucky. A crackle under my skin, a feather on my nape, a short circuit, a surge, fear. These are the small bombs scattered underneath my feet and strewn unseen across my path. A weekly, sometimes daily, charge of fear that is triggered without warning. In daytime waking hours, I can rationalize this. I dig out my mental toolkit and rummage, calmly, with compassion, for the best aid to contain and neutralize how I feel, to diffuse. At night, when it comes, I'm in bed, deep in sleep, with my old balding teddy bear tucked under my chin. It devastates. The fear surges then, untethered. My heart races long after I've woken and lie in damp shock with loose, broken limbs. This is the best that I have been. I am lucky. I've recovered partly, mostly. There's no expected full recovery for complex PTSD from childhood abuse. Trauma meted out then can last a lifetime in these fits and starts. It's a life sentence casually, violently handed down without reason. The brain protects us in childhood trauma. It is programmed to save our lives, to shut down, switch off, freeze, and escape when our bodies can't. Children's brains in the midst of trauma cannot process it or take it whole and file it in long-term memory storage, moving it to the past. The trauma lingers in the present. It remains unformed and blinded, butting into the walls of an internal maze, back and forth like the victim of a blindfolded prank. The brain may save us then, but we will pay later when we can at last stop and let go. Once it's finally over, the flashbacks and night terrors begin, just when we are safe from harm. I have had treatment. It was mostly successful. Now there are small bombs where there were explosions. Now there are charges and surges where before there was near annihilation. Now there are cracks, fissures where before I was obliterated. I should be grateful. But there is no romance to be found here. Trauma has not enriched my life. I'm not a changed for the better person who would never followed such a technicolor path without this. I struggle, and sometimes I struggle every fucking day. I burn with rage and grief and loss and injustice, and it is exhausting. The never sleeping through the night is exhausting. The constant anxiety, the fear of fantastical consequences if X or Y should happen is exhausting. I am sickened to be so limited in my health, to never work the hours I need to have the life that I'm entitled to. I am heartbroken that I cannot have the future that I want to give myself. I'm defeated by always being that one rung further down the ladder with the top just beyond my reach. But this isn't pity, this is anger. None of this is my fault. None of these crimes should ever have been inflicted on me, and there will never be any justice. It can never be undone. But somehow, somewhere, in the midst of all this unending shit, there is acceptance, there has to be. Fury and regret are shackles to before. I can only live the life that I have now. There is no other. My life must be full and appreciated. I owe this to the child that fought every day to survive. Acceptance is where the healing begins. Being thankful, appreciating the now, the moment as it is. Without acceptance, without healing, there is no more recovery for me. There is only the terror of the past. Again, again, again. So I try every day. I try to remember that I'm lucky, I am mostly well, I'm healing and will heal more. Sometimes I'm happy. In a twist of fate, I lived when other children did not. I am here, I'm alive, I am lucky.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. That was very powerful and so wonderful to hear it being read by you. And I think also it sort of encapsulates in a way what this book is about, because we're not saying that recovery is getting better necessarily, it's learning to live with, isn't it? And that absolutely encapsulates that. So thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for including it, both of you.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to move on to Adam. Adam Kelly Morton is a Montreal-based husband and father. I love that. 4 kids, all 7 and under. Gosh, that's intense. Who teaches acting and writing for a living. Recently, he completed a film version of his play, The Anorak, about the Montreal massacre. He's currently working towards an MA in creative writing from Teesside University, UK, distance learning, and has several film and theatrical projects on the go. Thank you, Adam. And you came to us obviously through the submission process, and from away, which is really lovely over in Canada. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what writing has meant to you in your own sort of life or your own sense of recovery?
So I've always been writing. Recently, I went through some of my mom's old effects and found a bunch of stuff that I wrote when I was really, really young, and it's fucking awful, but it's great to see that I've been writing through all of these years. I think the thing that astonished me most from the time I got sober, which was a little over 13 years ago, is just how productive I became, because I think I lived with a bit of that illusion that drinking helped me get connected to whatever dark side I needed to get connected to be able to write stuff. And the fact is that it did help me get connected to some of those things. The play that you were talking about, the anorak, I had to sort of go into a dark place, and there's sections of that play and that film that when I hear them, I'm like, oh man, I was hammered when I wrote that stuff. But what happened was just an explosion of creativity. I really identified with a little bit of what Gary was talking about, this idea of having to channel all of your energy into something, and being able to channel it into writing. It just allowed me to be a lot more creative and a lot more productive in a way that I couldn't be when I was hammered, when I was getting drunk all the time. So that's a big part of recovery for me. And there's a process that where you take all of these ideas of how you are better in your life and channel them into words, and it kind of makes the experience more real in a way. I don't know if I'm articulating it very well, but the idea is that it's not just an internal process anymore, it becomes an external process, and you're actually putting something down. And that's been super helpful for me.
Yeah, I totally relate to that. And I think also that, those people who have had addiction issues will know that it can be very self-absorbing, can't it? You become very sort of taken over by the urge of the drink or the next drink or whenever, or whatever, wherever it's leading you. So actually to be free of that must be a real relief, and that all of that creative energy can go into your work. So that's lovely. Thank you, Adam. Would you like to read some of your piece?
Sure. I'm just going to read a short part of the end of it. All right, so the piece is called "The Mountain Hears Me." The cold whacks me, wind whipping down the mountain. I find my cell phone. The screen is shattered, but the phone is still working somehow. Battery at 5%. I have a text from Wyatt that says, "Get home okay?" And another from my mom. "Are you coming for roast tomorrow night?" It's 5:15 Sunday morning. I shiver my way down the hill. There aren't any cars on Pine Avenue, only wind. I reach Pine and Park and look around. No people, no cabs. My teeth start chattering. I say, trying to warm myself, but my clothes are drenched beneath my Canada Post parka. I say again. It's a moaning sound coming from somewhere deep inside me. I just want to get home to my apartment, home to my mom and stepfather's house in the suburbs, home to roast beef. I remember when I was a teenager coming home and finding my mom asleep in the kitchen, drunk on box wine, the black and white television set on the kitchen counter showing some infomercial or white static noise. There are still no cabs. It's a guttural moan from my core, turning to a wail. A wail for life. A wail to the world that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing anymore. Wind is coming down the mountain. I keep wailing. A cab, light on top like a beacon, comes down Pine. It slows down and lets me in. Somehow I make it back to my apartment. It's dark inside, but I get into the bathroom flick on the light, and strip off my piss-soaked clothes. I look at myself in the mirror. There are bruises up the left side of my face, and part of my left eyebrow is hanging, swollen and blue over the socket. Naked, I stare at myself. I made it. I'll grab a sleep, then get a lift back home, have some roast, some wine. Nothing will stop me. Nothing but me.
Thank you, Adam. That was very powerful. Thank you so much, and very emotional. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, guys.
And actually, a really good extract to read as well, because you touched on the generational aspect of addiction, you know, where you mentioned your mother and returning to her. And of course, that's something that we haven't talked about tonight, but it's such a powerful thing in addiction. And, you know, and it's also what drew me to doing this project, having a father who was an addict, and, you know, the fear that that brings up in you as the child of an addict. So thank you very much, Adam. And it's also a good thing then to move on to Maggie, because Maggie is with us because of which she will talk a bit more about her relationship with her daughter. But I'll just introduce you, Maggie. Maggie Sawkins won the 2013 Ted Hughes Award for New Work in Poetry for Zones of Avoidance, a sequence of poems inspired by her personal and professional involvement with people in recovery from addictions. Maggie has just moved to the Isle of Wight from Portsmouth, where she has facilitated creative writing projects for over 20 years. Her new collection, The House Where Courage Lives, is to be published later in the year by Waterloo Press. Maggie, welcome, and you can take your mute off now. I know, yeah. So you're very active in teaching creative writing and working with recovery groups, and also your two poems that we chose for the anthology were about, well, they were sort of inspired by your relationship with your daughter, I think. Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I've always written from a very young age, about 9. And then I suppose I had quite a sort of troubled childhood, so it helped me, I think writing helped me deal with that. And then, yeah, I think it was the year 2000, my older daughter became addicted to quite hard drugs, heroin, and then she developed schizophrenia as well as a result of that. She also had a young son that she couldn't look after. So I think it was Gary that said, you know, he didn't expect to live beyond the age of 40. And I guess I always lived with that thought that I didn't know whether my daughter would, how long she was going to live. You're always expecting the sort of knock on the door, really. So I began writing, keeping a kind of record in a journal, in a quite detached way, really, rather like a fly on the wall. So it was kind of a document of what was going on. I also wrote some unsent letters to my grandson and to my daughter. And so by the end of, well, I was doing that in case something happened. So there'd be some sort of record for him, really. So by the end of about 20 years, I had like a pile of stuff that I'd written. And then I met someone, a director, and he said, "You know anyone that's got anything they'd like to turn into a live literature performance?" And I suddenly thought, I just said, well, I've got all this stuff that I don't know what to do with. And he suggested that we craft it into something. Yeah, I guess I could have written a memoir, but then when I was looking at all the years of things that I'd written about, in a way, I thought it's only, in a way, it was just like the one story, like that could be told in not very many words. I think the truth of it all was condensed. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well. There seemed to be a terrible beauty in the condensing of it all into poetry and sort of monologues, really. So, yeah, I had no idea that someone was going to nominate it for the Ted Hughes Award. I don't think I'd even heard of the Ted Hughes Award.
It's such a lovely story, Maggie. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And that came out of raw experience, and you just sort of your survival in a way, wasn't it? You're trying to find a way of getting your words down on the page. Would you like to share one of your poems with us? Would you like to read?
Well, this one from the anthology, it's not really anything from Zones of Avoidance. It's actually, it's kind of, I drew on my own drug-taking experiences as a younger person. And one of the, another antidote I find is being playful with words. I quite like word games. So this one's script started as an exercise in just using the vowel I. Script. Lily swigging spirits with bikini girl in Lightship Inn. Slim Jim spiking it with mystic pills. Nitwit Nit sips his pims. Bikini girl's dissing it. Finds shrimp pink lipstick. Slicks Nick's lips with it. Winks. Nick's livid, lifts his fist. Lily sits tight. Mind spinning. Misfits mimics. Bigwigs dimwits imbibing it, sniffing it. Slim Jim flips. Nick slinging it. Bikini girl's high. Bigwigs winging it. Lily's thigh, kissing, licking it. Bikini girl sighs. Lily sips tixie lips. Pin pricks, prickly skin, itching, fixing it. Things shift. Spirits fly. I'm scripting it. Thrilling, isn't it?
I love that one, Maggie. Thank you so much. That's right at the start of. It's right at the start of the anthology. Maggie, I'm going to have to ask you to put your mute on, I'm afraid, because we're getting that funny echo again. Thank you so much. So that was just extraordinary, really wonderful. Thank you. I'm sure I can thank you from all the other people here. It was really powerful readings. Thank you so much. And I'm hoping that we might have some questions from the audience for the last section of the launch. So if you do, then please do put them in the chat, and we can read them out. You can either direct them to individual people or just ask quite general questions. Robin, shall I pass it over to you if you've?
Yes, thank you. I'll take back the chair and begin really just by thanking the contributors for the experience that you've just given to us, which was really superb. Somebody put a comment in that they'll remember, this is after one of the readings, I'll remember this for a very long time. And I just want to echo that thought. And maybe, you know, if we just round of applause at our different ways, in our different spaces, and different squares on the screen, I think, you know, salutations are deserved here. We have a question. It's a formal question really about the structure of the book itself, but it's interesting to address this. And it's, I guess, to Lily and Zoe, how did you decide to structure the anthology? Because you made creative aesthetic decisions about the categories of thought. And how did you assess the materials so that you could distribute them into those particular categories? And do those categories, I'm elaborating the question a little here, but you know, what do the categories represent? So over to you guys.
Zoe, do you want to answer that? Because we talked a bit about that, didn't we? And we kind of were quite happy with our slightly oblique sort of approach.
Yeah, I mean, not surprisingly, many themes emerged when we were reading everything together to fit into the book. And as with any anthology or collection of writing, and I imagine that poets have this experience with their collections as well. How to order it is, you can do what you like, but we thought about various approaches, didn't we? We thought, oh, how are we gonna make it so that the reader has an experience of contrasting moods or topics, and we weren't quite sure. And I think Lily came up with these experiential kind of categories or emotional categories that we ended up using as titles of sections for the book. But then the fun came when we took our list of joy, love, surrender, survival, whatever they were, and then started rereading the pieces to see where they would fit, because so many of them were full of many of the categories, and also you couldn't really pin them down. And so we decided to be a bit more playful with our heading categories and slightly surprise the reader with what they might find under a given heading, which we both felt was important for approaching a book that is doing both joy and despair and surrender and release, but also really difficult things that you have to start guessing, what's it going to mean for love to be in this story? It's not going to be obvious.
Yes, no, I would second that. It was quite fun, and yeah, and we kind of did it quite through instinct as well, I think, didn't we? It was a bit like, okay, well, where's the heart telling us to put that one? Okay, we'll go with that one. So yeah.
Well, I could put a question. Can I put a question to all of the contributors that are here? And it was something Rob said, which was like being able to do magic. And lots of writers here, I'm sure, and readers, and both, that sense of doing magic, of the stuff that you consider to be yours suddenly becoming a playful entity that you're engaging with. I mean, I can't put it into words. I think Rob put it as best as I've ever heard it stated, like being able to do magic. Can I just ask the contributors whether that echoes with all of you, and if it does, what it might mean to you, this process of writing and the liberation that it brings you?
I'm happy to contribute. If Rob, I don't know, Rob, if you want to go first, or
Yeah, I think you can go.
Well, jump in.
That's all right, you go.
Yeah, Jackie, you take it away.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, well, actually, I wish I did find it like magic when you're writing. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Because a lot of the time it's much more hard work than that. But I think in terms of life writing or memoir for me, so nonfiction, that when I'm writing it at the time, it's, as I'm sure for all of us, like I'm writing this piece, for example, let's say 3 years ago, and I'm sort of just putting the words on the page, and the magic, I suppose, is I'm making sense of what's happening, or making sense, I didn't realize this is how I felt, or I didn't make these links, or I didn't realize this was a metaphor, or whatever. But then later on, when you're kind of reflecting back, I think what's magic is you can look at what you've written and sort of see the narrative of things, because you start, especially as you start to get older, you start to have a more of a narrative arc that you sort of lay on top of stuff. So maybe that's not, for me, not so much the words forming on the page, because I don't often find that magical, but the ability to see what I've written and for it to be some kind of tool that makes some kind of magic out of obviously not very good experiences would be how I'd answer that, really.
That's lovely. You spoke of snorkeling, didn't you? And
Yes.
it seems to be the same thing as us swimming around, and this process of creation being also a process of discovery, and fixing things, as it were, onto the page being also a process of liberation. It's, these tensions and dynamics make it into an extraordinary act. And Maggie spoke about sort of being a fly on the wall, observing yourself. So yeah, I mean, Rob, you conjured that phrase. Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, when I say magic, what I mean about it is, it's a process, isn't it? It's like a magical process. You're turning something into something, and also it's the ability to send images into somebody else's mind. You're creating stories, and you're sending stories and images into other people's minds. and the whole process of writing is like a magic spell. You're putting down symbols that mean something, and together they become words, and together the words become a story. It's all like, to me, it just seems like magic. I suppose maybe as well because I had such difficulty with it through most of my life, you know, and then suddenly I was able to do it. So it seems to me like a kind of magic.
Yeah, and I get that also, the magic being that there's a part of it that's actually not in your control as well, which I think it can feel quite magical and quite transformative in that.
Yeah.
We might go in with a certain intention, but actually what we end up with is possibly not what we thought we were going to get, and that can be really surprising.
And then there's a kind of quality of magic, as Rob's saying, that your thoughts, your words, your experiences, your images that you're playing with then become the thoughts, words, images and experiences of another human being, for other people all around the world. You have no idea where they are. Gary mentioned being marginalized, and I think that's one of the most awful descriptions of a human being that I can possibly think of. And the fact that your thoughts and ideas and words are getting around the globe into so many heads and lives dispels that instantly and in one stroke. Gary, can you just say anything about that, about going from sort of feeling very, very small and sort of limited to actually speaking, to the world?
Terrifying. Like I started out like a little mouse, and now I'm getting quite good at, although I'm nervous, this is something different, something new. I'm much better at not worrying what other people will think about and stuff that I produce. More with music now. I mean, I write music and writing lyrics for music. But I find quite difficult, writing lyrics I find really difficult. But yeah, I mean, marginalized, yeah, because heroin addicts, crack addicts, homeless alcoholics, we are the people that are generally walked past and ignored. But from my experiences of having lots of interactions with people like me over the years, so much untapped creative potential, so many beautiful souls with incredible stories, and such damaged, beautiful souls that if they can be nurtured can be such bright lights, but they just need someone to take an interest. And Zoe and Lily doing this was taking an interest in people that don't usually get to have a voice, I suppose.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. That's just, you've just said it so eloquently, and that's absolutely right. It's the person that you see on the street corner who, most people would just not even think twice about, and actually they are human beings with all this potential that they just couldn't find an outlet for, or something went wrong, or they made the wrong decision, or they fell into the power of addiction, or whatever it is. That absolutely encapsulates it for me. Thank you.
Yes, that's beautifully spoken. Both, and Adam spoke about the internal becoming the external, and you think of all these enclosed worlds with so much in there that just needs to be brought out. And I'm imagining Lily now walking into St Mungo's thinking, is there anything here? And then walking out a couple of hours later going, oh my goodness, where does it end? There's so much, of which the fruits are, I'll do this one more time, of which the fruits are the book. Ladies and gentlemen, we're sort of just about out of time, so I'm going to hand the smoking pipe back to Lily to conclude the proceedings. But once again, thank you very much, everyone who's rolled up for this. I'm sorry that we're not in a real cafe somewhere. We'd all be teeming out onto the streets now, laughing and joking. But there's a sense of the camaraderie of the writing community here. But thank you very much, and over to you, Lily.
Thanks, Robin. No, I just really wanted to finish by saying thank you to everybody. And when we first had this project on the go, I had visions of us all meeting in some nice place somewhere. And of course, that's always going to be problematic because everybody is all over the place. And, you know, there are lots of contributors here. As I said, we have 49 in the book, and I know a lot of you are here. So I'm sorry that we couldn't all, you could actually, those contributors who want to put their cameras on for the last few minutes, then it would be lovely to see your faces. And, you know, just really saying thank you, because this couldn't have happened without the contributors. It's, you know, we've created a real community of writers who have all been supporting us all the way through. And also, of course, thank you to Unbound. I know that Alex, our editor, is here, our project manager. We're absolutely thrilled, Alex, with the book, and the whole team there at Unbound. You've just been brilliant. And, you know, and also such thanks to you for allowing these kinds of projects to be published, because it's not, you know, these are not the easiest books to work with. And hi, Emily, we're seeing some faces. Hi, Kate. Hi, Astra. So yeah, and Alan, hi John, hi Angela. So we've got some of our contributors here, and Polly and Sadie. This is just wonderful. And we've got Annie. We can't see Annie yet, but maybe we can see her name. And yeah, just for you to get a sense of each other. So just really saying thank you. And also, of course, to all those people who have pledged for the book, because again, we wouldn't have had our book if we didn't raise the funds, and you all helped us do that. So we're really hugely grateful to you. And here's Alex. This is Alex from Unbound. Hi, Alex. Really nice to meet you. And yeah, just I feel very proud of what we've done. And thank you to Zoe for being my rock constantly and into the future, and also to Robin for chairing tonight, which takes the huge stress off us. So Zoe, do you want to add any thanks? Is there anyone I've forgotten?
Just massive thanks for those readings, everybody. It was amazingly intense and emotional, and also there's a really special, strange, specific pride in being an editor on this book with Lily. Like the joy of this coming out and it being full of other people's writing. You know, it sort of feels like we've helped to make something happen, and now we hand it over to the world, and it's everybody else's glory, and I love that feeling. So I'm immensely moved by seeing all the names of our contributors in the front, and I'm also really moved by seeing the names of so many people we know in the back who pledged to support it. So thank you to all of you, and yes, send it sailing out into the world and tell everybody about it and blow their socks off too.
And thanks, guys, and thank you also for all your comments in the comments field. We will have a look at those after the event, so we'll get a chance to have a look at that as well. So thank you, guys. And we're dead on 7:30, so everyone can go and have their supper or whatever it is they need to do. And thank you all for coming. Bye.